like guns, I like the way they look. I like the shiny steel and the polished wood. I don't care if they're big or small, if they're for sale, hell, I want them all. I like guns.
We're diving into a topic that sparked heated debate and deep emotions, the portrayal of gun safety in relation to children. In recent years, mainstream media, along with influential groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics, has ramped up their messaging, often leaning heavily into the distorted statistics that are rare occurrences. They paint a grim picture that seems to suggest every child is in imminent danger from firearms, fueling a narrative that can overshadow the complexities of the issue.
We always say, well, I'm very safe at my home, but we're not teaching children. You go to visit and your friends start playing with their father or mother's gun, what to do. We don't give kids that direction to say, leave, call me, or say, please don't point that, I'm uncomfortable with you playing with that. We don't teach our kids that, and that's usually the scenario of what happens.
But should children this young really be trusted with potentially lethal force?
A new survey released today might have you talking about where you keep a gun in your home, especially if you have children.
Yeah, medical reporter Liz Bonas is here to tell us why public health experts are raising some new concerns. Liz.
Whether or not they have guns that are not locked up before sending their children to play.
That's now the big push from the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Consider this. There is a gun inside 1 in 3 American households. Maybe not yours, but maybe inside your child's friend's house. Between 2014 and 2016, there were more than 1,000 accidental shootings involving children.
Our frontal brains that make decisions are not formed until we are in our mid-20s. Why is that important? Because that's why children and teens are more likely to have risky events and take risky behaviors and not understand the importance of understanding gun safety.
Now with Dr. Darian talking about a new study that suggests that gun-owning parents who teach their kids about gun safety are less likely to store their guns safely.
Many parents of young children want to keep them away from guns, but a growing number are now actually putting guns into their kids' hands. But why?
Nearly half of guns in this country are not locked away properly, and guns accidentally kill kids in the U.S. 10 times more often than any other developed country in the world.
How many times does it have to happen before people say it's enough? It's enough for me. It's enough for me. I didn't choose to sacrifice my child to this. If it saves one person from the horror of what my family and I are facing, just one, it's enough.
Since once, almost every hour in America, a child or teen is injured or killed by a gun, often fired accidentally by other children. But critics argue that's a risky bet for most parents. Training and trust may not be enough to prevent accidents. Kids and guns, they say, simply don't mix.
Kids are impulsive, and you can't teach that out of a kid, right? You can't.
Dr. Denise Dowd helps write policy for the American Academy of Pediatrics. She says kids' brains aren't mature enough. They lack impulse control.
You can teach them, they can pare it back, but they should not be in independent control of that weapon.
Gun violence is the #1 cause of death of children between the ages of 1 and 17. Just an important note, an important reminder for those who own guns, 40% of homes within the United States, to take better care to keep these things away from children.
We're seeing emotionally charged headlines and stories that focus on isolated incidents, using heart-wrenching imagery to trigger a sympathetic response. But what's the reality behind these statistics? Are we getting a full picture, or is this just a narrative being shaped to fit a particular agenda? Well, stay tuned as we unravel the layers of misinformation and discuss the real conversations we should be having about gun safety in children. Solutions that are being brought forth, like speaking with Jane Sharp, the author of Freedom Baby ABC, Gun Safety from Ammo to X-Ring, and the companion Gun Safety Activity Book for Kids, is an answer. Her works provide a more nuanced view of this critical issue.
Well, I have 5 kids, and I've homeschooled them for the past, I can never remember, it's since 2006. So whatever that math is, I've been homeschooling for so long that my brain is turning to mush. And I was really, really busy. I had 5 kids under 11. Before that, I had 4 kids under 7. There was a little gap there at the end. So homeschooling was definitely something that, took up a huge portion of my life. Well, now almost all my kids are older, and so I have a lot more free time. And I've always been a writer. When I was in elementary school, I was, we were publishing books as children, and they got to be put on the library shelf at the school library. And this was so exciting for me to see my book on the shelf. And I got, my book had a little library checkout card. Do you remember when they used to have the card catalog? And so people could check out my book by signing it out, and I could see how many people checked it out. And then I just found that to be very exciting. I've always been a writer. I have written just forever, but when my kids started getting old enough that I wasn't homeschooling every day, all day, and I just have one student now who's 12, I realized that I could sort of explore the things I was interested in, which turned out to be writing. And my first 2 books I illustrated also, but I realized that my real skill's in the writing and not the illustrating. So since then I've hired illustrators for the things that need art. But I've just been really, really satisfied with the writing process and creating a product that is filling a need. Because what's interesting about all the topics I've chosen when I publish, I'm always going for the underdog, and so these are niches that don't have a lot of literature for children. So whether it's gun safety or like the crunchy community or kids with special medical needs, this is sort of an underrepresented group. And so I think that that's probably what ties my work together, is that it's for people that aren't having a wealth of literature to turn to. So I grew up, my father's a Vietnam vet. And so my whole life I've been going to the range with him. I have been watching him reload. He has been focused on teaching safety to me and my brother and sister. And then, of course, when I started having kids, he's been one of our big instructors. And always, you can't do anything without him being like, and do you check if it's loaded? So it's just something I grew up with. And I think in 2020, I was on Facebook and somebody started this silly post, and it was saying, A for a topic, and then everybody would go through the alphabet and fill in the next letter on that theme. And my imagination just went nuts. And I was like, this is so fun. And so I latched onto this themed alphabet idea, and I just went through as many lists as I could, creating themes of 26 letters that followed a theme. And so Freedom Baby ABC came about in that way, where I just tried to fill in the whole alphabet on the theme of guns and the nouns and verbs associated with guns and gun safety, so that it would be appropriate for children and friendly. The person who's looking for Freedom Baby ABC they probably don't know they're looking for it, frankly, because there's not a lot, when you are searching for books for young children, everything seems to be focused like, the farmyard or, different educational focuses. But what's fun when you have a hobby or a moral belief that really affects your lifestyle is finding a book that is teaching your kids what you're already teaching them. So a family that is going to the range or has, a rifle leaned up against the corner of the door jamb, and everybody knows, you don't touch it. This is dad's, like the kind of family I grew up in. My dad's projects would be spread out on a bath towel in the living room, and he would sit on the floor and watch TV while he cleaned one of his rifles. He did black powder shooting. He had to clean really. So for me, it was totally normal to have a partially assembled rifle on the floor in my living room. It was totally normal for me when I would be like looking on the bookshelf as a 10-year-old. I would pull out a book, and my father would have stuck, just for funsies, a pearl-handled lady's muff pistol behind the bookshelf. This is not necessarily normal for every family, but we grew up in a family where you don't touch a gun, you ask your dad or some other adult for help. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the Eddie Eagle program, but it's the NRA's child safety class. And my kids will sing, I'll embarrass myself here, but they'll sing, "Stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. This is how I grew up. This was all very normal for me and for my kids also. So a person who lives that kind of lifestyle will come across Freedom Baby ABC on the table at a gun show or maybe in a gun store. I'm hoping to have my books available in more gun stores. And they'll think, oh my gosh, this book represents our family. My kid knows what primers are. My kids know what clay pigeons are. It has the safety principles in there, like, keep your finger off the trigger. And these are things that the families are already teaching their kids. These are things that they're familiarizing their children with, as their child ages at different age appropriate levels. And so they are just tickled. They just love it because they're like, wow, I can have my 10-month-old on my lap and be reading stories. And instead of dad being bored to tears, A is for apple, B is for bumblebee. He's like, look, baby, ammo, brass, clay pigeons. And it's fun for dad. It's something that they're already encouraging their kids about. And they just love it. They love it. Well, I would love to also tell your listeners about the gun safety activity book. So far, I've talked about Freedom Baby ABC, which is the children's alphabet book full of like really bright and colorful pictures. And I feel like, my son was 9 when I finished it. And, we have a very book-rich lifestyle. And so and of course, he's probably a little biased because I wrote it, but he absolutely was interested in Freedom Baby ABC because of like learning the words. But I realized there was a gap when I would go on Amazon and search for gun safety books. I don't want to sound judgy, but like a lot of the books look sort of like slapped together or unprofessional or very, very advanced and super boring, and technical. So not very appealing. So I created my gun safety activity book for that age group that has outgrown Freedom Baby ABC, because that's just nouns. It's one word or maybe 2 per page. Like for the letter Y, it's youth shooting sports, right? So that's a couple words, but it's really just 26 very simple ideas. So gun safety activity book is meant for kids who are, maybe 7 or 8, depending on like how rural your lifestyle is. There's definitely boys out there toting the guns out in the field and hitting squirrels when they're pretty young. But for the average American, I think it might be, 8 and up. I think a 13 or 14-year-old who has not been in a super strong, like family gun culture will still be entertained by gun safety activity book. But I made it, have you seen, there's like a t-shirt, it's sort of a joke t-shirt. And it says the anatomy of a pew, P-E-W, like a bullet. And it says like bangy black dust, pointy metal thing, case. And it's just like a joke about the anatomy of a, have you seen that? So I made a real anatomy diagram, actually breaking down the parts of a bullet. I've put a lesson about knowing what's behind your target, and it lines up a couple objects and it shows how a bullet can go past your target and into other things. I've got a cryptogram that breaks up the 4 rules of gun safety. I've got, the Second Amendment written out with some blanks where they can learn the actual phrasing of this Second Amendment. There's a little blurb about the Heller case, and so it's very educational. And it's got a lot of diagrams. Like, for instance, there's an image of a handgun and the parts of it are numbered. And it says, like, here, how to label it properly and know the anatomy of the different weapons. And there's some books recommended on the last page. If you go to my website, there's a whole PDF that gives you a good sampling of the internal pages. So you can see that it's not a coloring book. I mean, it is a coloring book, but I was a little bit disappointed. I was looking up gun coloring books. And I was like, wait a second, guns are literally black or gray or maybe some brown. Like, this would be the most boring coloring book to color because you just need the 3 colors. And I was like, this isn't interesting in the way that, a farm animal coloring book would be full of different colors and the grass and the sun. And so I was like, I'm not going to just make a coloring book where the only color you might get to use is like orange for clay pigeons, right? So my book is just absolutely full of activities and puzzles and mazes and diagrams and things like that. So it's going to be really engaging and it's not going to be boring.
So there you have it, Jane Sharp. A mother first, a writer foremost. No hype or hysteria, no exaggerated or out of context statistics. Just a fun and important solution to a sensitive situation. Introducing ideas, skills, and knowledge to young children about a tool, firearms. When mishandled, like many tools, it can be dangerous. As underdeveloped as a child's mind is, we cannot simply ignore familiarizing them with, nor teaching them about firearms. To find out more or purchase your copy of Freedom Baby ABC or the accompanying Gun Safety Activity Handbook for Kids, visit Amazon Bookstore or go to janesharp.com, that's sharp with an E at the end, or visit our website, libertycrackmedia.com. And now we'll finish with Steve Lee's I Like Guns.
Oh, I like guns, I like the way they look. I like the shiny steel and the polished wood. I don't care if they're big or small, if they're for sale, hell, I want them all. I like guns, I like guns, I like guns. Well, I really like 22 mag, 45 lever with the Winchester tag. I like my double barrel, had it most of my life. 357 was a present from my wife. I like guns, I like the way they look. I like the shiny steel and the polished wood. I don't care if they're big or small, they're for sale, hell, I want them all. I like guns, I like guns, I like guns. All the fuss, why they're trying to take the guns off of us. 'Cause I ain't gonna shoot anyone, and no one shoots at me, 'cause I got a gun. I like guns, I like the way they look. I like the shiny steel and the polished wood. I don't care if they're big or small, they're for sale, well, hell, I want them all. I like guns, I like guns, I like guns. Animals and God made the trees. God made you, well, hell, He even made me. And He gave me this voice so I could be a singer. So you tell me why I've got a trigger finger. I like guns, I like the way they look. I like the shiny steel and the polished wood. I don't care if they're big or small, they're for sale, well, hell, I want them all. I like guns, I like guns, I like guns. I like guns, I like guns, I like guns.